Hello and good morning to our listeners from around the world, and welcome to another great edition of This Morning with Soulivity, broadcasting live from our studio in the nation's capital and on KMET 1490 AM in Southern California. My name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and I am so glad that you are here with us. I'm joined today by some very special friends and Soulivity host, Candice Harper and Tami Gaines. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Oh yeah, that's that choral good morning I want to hear. Listen, before we begin, I want to remind our listeners that you are part of this conversation. We want your questions, your comments, your thoughts. If you are live with us on Facebook or YouTube on our social media channels, you are able to chat with us. So just post directly to those chats and let us know what you're thinking. Additionally, let us know where you're coming from. I mean, if you're in overseas, if you're in Europe or Asia, please let us know where you're from so we can do some shout outs to you. I want to jump right on in because, ladies, when we were putting this show together, I have to tell you, my heart was low. I still can't believe my eyes. And so, Tami, I'm going to have you take us into this latest story from Philadelphia. And I want to warn our audience that some of the subject matter that you're going to hear about may not be suitable for young children. So just wanted to make sure that we said that. So I'll hand it over to you, Tami.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Good morning again. It is Black History Month, and we're only a week into it, and there's some amazing things happening. I'm going to get to this in 1 second, but let's remember LeBron became the all-time scorer.
Yeah.
Beyonce won 32 Grammys.
Yep.
Viola Davis became an EGOT.
Yes.
Ben Crump had St. Thomas University Law School named after him.
Yeah.
The first practicing Black attorney to ever have a law school named after him.
Oh, wow.
We got the first Black governor of Maryland.
Yeah.
And for the first time in history, 2 Black quarterbacks are facing each other in the Super Bowl.
Right.
This has been an extraordinary week.
Yeah, making Black history.
Making Black history. And then this happens.
Yeah.
Right.
So 3 white girls in Philly who are in high school. Let's level set. These aren't grown people. These are kids in high school. The one girl sprayed black spray paint in another girl's face while another girl was videotaping the whole thing. And she was, why she's spraying the paint, she says, "You're a Black girl. You know your roots. It's February. You're nothing but a slave. And after this, she's doing my laundry."
Yeah.
And everybody starts laughing. And the girl that got her face painted said, "I'm Black and I'm proud."
Wow.
And, I remember I saw this yesterday and I literally dropped everything and I stared at the TV like, what? And as crazy as that is, the school literally was like, well, they're going to face disciplinary action. They'll get suspended. They might, whatever. It's the most ridiculous reaction to this incident. The school basically is saying like, oh, it's unacceptable and we're not sure what we're going to do about it at this point.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's funny just to by comparison, there was a white girl at a University of Kentucky who apparently was a complete racist, and they just permanently banned her from campus. They immediately were like, "You are not allowed to step foot back on this campus."
Was that the one that tortured her roommate? Is that the one you're talking about?
I don't know. Talk about that.
Well,
Uh,
I'm not really sure if it's the exact same story, but there's a story from a few years ago, where a young white woman tortured her roommate, who was a young black woman, and just by doing the most disgusting things. And she
n-
was banned from campus and expelled from the
yeah.
school. Well, I
Now
wanted.
Wow.
this woman was just apparently slinging the N-word all over campus, and there was enough
Wow.
complaints that the president like finally kicked her out,
Mm.
Yeah,
and she's
Mm.
facing criminal charges.
Well, as she should.
yeah. Hate
Okay,
criminal.
and then we get back to high school. I have a high schooler. Um, Absolutely. Not only is it unacceptable behavior, but I feel like it's an unacceptable response to the behavior.
Of course.
Yeah,
I think so too.
and an argument for why CRT is necessary,
Well,
I'm gonna
right?
speak on it.
hello. Or at least, at high school, the pathway to understanding CRT,
Yeah.
right? But which is basically just history. In fact, um, let me just put this in context for those of you who may not know your history. You should know this history, by the way, but that's just me saying that. If you go to history.com, they have a great article on the history of blackface in America.
Mm,
And they say, just bear with me here. The portrayal of blackface when people darken their skin with shoe polish, grease paint, or burnt cork and paint on enlarged lips or other exaggerated features is steeped in centuries of racism. It peaked in popularity during an era of the United States when demands for civil rights by recently emancipated slaves triggered racial hostility. And today, because of blackface's historic use to denigrate people of African descent, its continued use is still considered racist. It's an assertion of power and control, says David Leonard, a professor of comparative ethics studies and American studies at Washington State University. He goes on to say it allows a society to routinely and historically imagine African Americans as not fully human. It serves to rationalize violence and Jim Crow segregation. Woo!
Well, see, the thing too, I mean, as it pertains to this video, you're dealing with three high school girls who they don't have the emotional wherewithal probably to even grasp the concept of what you're talking about. I mean,
Right.
they're not even smart enough not to spray poison in each other's faces.
yeah, by the way, and then there's that. You literally put this chick's health in
At
jeopardy.
risk,
Right, exactly.
right?
Spray paint is not healthy.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But mainly because not that they don't have the capacity, but no one around them had the wherewithal to have them have a level of empathy. Like you can be 16 years old and be empathetic enough not to do these things. And the fact that they got to this age and they don't have the good sense, not to just not be racist, but to be, careless with each other's health in
Right,
that way.
right,
In
Yeah,
that
right.
whose idea
way,
was that? Who was like, let's go buy some black spray paint?
spray paint and spray it in my friend's face.
Yeah,
Like
that's a great idea.
who's guiding these
Maybe
children?
they're
Like,
just fundamentally stupid.
yeah. And where are these parents? Who's guiding them? Like who,
What do
yeah.
you why do you both think this persists? Because this has been going on since, as we know in the history books, going on before Jim Crow South started. So this is like 100 and something years going on.
I think that's why. I mean, I think that's part of the reason is the longevity, but also because we're in an age now where there's just so much consumption and so much aware. Like I can remember I grew up in a small town near Pittsburgh, very similar sort of mental paradigm around race when I was growing up, but I
Mm,
had no idea of it because we didn't have the internet, right?
right, right.
So on some level, I knew what racism was because of the limited information in the history books and the encyclopedia, what my parents knew to share with me. But I had no idea until I looked back what real, racist experience were. And even the racist experiences that I had, that isn't how I identified them. But nowadays, these kids have a perfect storm of all the information in the world at their fingertips, all of the things that they see and interact with, a lack of empathy and sensitivity because everything is so digital. Right. And then if they don't have any sort of support in their lives that is saying, look, this is how you develop humanity, and where would that support come from? Because we all grew up knowing how to interact with each other.
Right.
Like knowing how to talk to people.
Right.
Well, not everybody.
Well, that's but you know what I mean? Knowing how to actually be in the same room, even if it's a negative interaction, knowing how to actually be with someone beyond a digital, like our first line of interaction is in person. Whereas their first is digital, technical. So where does the empathy come from?
I don't know. I love Candy's heart. I love your heart. I grew up completely aware of racism.
Did you?
I've told you guys before, we were the only Black family for 4 counties.
Wow. Yeah.
In a very, and this is what's disturbing, I grew up in a very upper class neighborhood. So these were really wealthy white people, like, heads of banks,
Right.
heads of state. And we moved. We moved into the neighborhood, and they immediately, like, they spray painted the N-word on our garage. They did donuts on our lawn. I was 11 years old. And I remember my mom confronting my dad. This is like 2:00 in the morning. My mother was screaming her head off, so we all woke up. But she was saying, like, I want to go back. Like, where we moved from was a completely diverse. And think about this is like 1970s. Our neighborhood had a sprinkling of everything: Indian, Jewish, white, Black, like, you name it.
Right.
Anyway, you sort of take that for granted. And when we were acutely aware of racism, and Candy, you said now, like, tech is everywhere. Very interesting. I was talking to my daughter last night about what happened.
Yeah.
She said 2 things. One is, I don't want to talk about it. Which I thought was, like, interesting. I was like, why? And she was like, I'm just so sick of hearing about all this racial stuff.
Yeah.
But Brian, I wanted to point out one thing. You talked about, critical race theory.
Yeah.
We live in a happy bubble here because we do restorative justice throughout the entire school system, which I think is a more constructive conversation than critical race theory. So restorative circles, they basically repair harm that has been done within a community. That community could be, racial, it could be gender, it could be whatever.
Right.
They force the kids to sit down at the beginning of every day for 20 minutes and talk about, like, this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know how I feel about critical race theory, to be honest with you. Anyway.
Well, let's continue this. Let's continue this conversation. Because there's a lot of different sides to it. I think in the next on the next segment, I think we want to talk a little bit about something that's you're talking about, Tami, and that is, what effects are these stereotypes and this behavior having on our children, specifically children of color, because they're the ones who are, being the victims of this racial hate and trauma, because it's traumatic.
Yeah,
right. It's traumatic. I'm an adult and I'm still traumatized by some of that stuff.
Right. So how in the heck are they, like, even coping with it, right? And so we're going to take a quick break, everyone, and we'll be back with more of This Morning in about 2 minutes.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame, living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
Hi there, Sheila Applegate here with some exciting news. I've joined the incredible Soulivity team as the host of the new Consciously Awesome live show, where I will be sharing insights to help you discover your full brilliance and claim the vibrant life you deserve. So tune in every Wednesday right here on Soulivity TV to join the fun, and remember to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a single episode. Have an awesome week, and I will see you on Wednesday.
And we're back with more this morning with Soulivity. I'm joined by Tami and Candice. We're talking about negative racial stereotyping, racial hate, trauma, and its effect on children. And Candy, I'm going to go to you because I think one part that we were talking about the other day when we were going to take this topic on is how this is affecting our children, right? Specifically African-American children and other children of color. How are they dealing with those traumatic experiences? Because it is trauma, y'all.
Yeah.
When that happens to them, it is trauma.
No, 100%. And the first thing I thought about, because like I said, where I grew up, this was basically the kind of people I went to school with, right? But I didn't, when I was young, I didn't necessarily experience it in the moment because I just didn't recognize that as what it was, right? But what I feel now with children today, and what's so important is that there's this thing about the ability to develop good emotional intelligence and your mental health, right? As you're dealing with something that's traumatic or as you're going through, your early years. A man was talking about his daughter, his young Black daughter, and her niece were some of the first Black students to see this video. And so immediately that's where my main concern went. The silly girls in the video, I mean, clearly they're going to need some sort of education and discipline and all of that, but less.
And a lawyer.
Yeah, probably in a year too. But less important, I think, than the care that the Black students who either deal with them or go to school with them, and any of the Black students that see it across, the internet as it's now viral, are going to need the mental health care or an understanding of what do I do when I'm faced with something like this? Because I think what it can potentially do is just harden and steel us to, well, this is just the way it is. These people, this is just how it's going to be. And now I just have to suck it up and sort of trudge through life. And I think it's very important that we acknowledge that there's many things that can be done to not fix racism, mitigate it, but actually understand how you can control what role it's going to have in your life. Right? And by that, I mean, you can control actually taking care of yourself and what support you're going to need in order to be able to be faced with these kinds of things, because obviously it's a reality in our culture. Right. So I found this really helpful list from youngminds.org. It's a website from the UK, and it's structured to help young people with their mental health. And, it just talks about all the possibilities. But as I was looking at it, I was like, these are also good for adults to be aware of, because we need to be that space, that safe space for, loving young people through the experience of racism. And some of the things it talks about are like, speaking to someone you trust when you're faced with something that feels, traumatic or feels negative or hurts your sensibilities, like anything that makes you feel as though someone is biased or hateful towards you, having someone to speak to who's older and can hold space for that. And I think as adults, what we often do is maybe minimize the
Mm-hmm.
experience. Because, like I
Mm-hmm.
was saying earlier, for me, up to at least 10 years ago, I had minimized my own experience of it.
Right.
That's what I was
Right.
trying to illustrate earlier, is that it's not that I never saw anything racist. It's that when I was young, I wasn't aware enough to realize that's what it was until I got older. So, I think we naturally, part of our resilience through racism is, well, just keep going. It's not that bad. And I think that's something we have to be very careful of with young people, to be a space for it is that bad. And you do need the support.
So,
Right. Yeah, go
do
ahead,
you,
Tami.
I love what you're saying. I think it's very, it's on point, right? It's very academic.
Mm.
But then there's the reality of, sorry, excuse me. I think that we should not underestimate, my daughter is saying, I don't want to talk about this. I'm exhausted from this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the reality. I feel like we shouldn't underestimate in this conversation. We shouldn't really underestimate like the kids. They're super smart.
Mm-hmm.
They are
Mm-hmm.
exposed. Like they know nonsense when they see nonsense,
Mm-hmm.
unless they're raised in a bubble. So think about this. These girls, by the way, this could be like I'm gonna drop a bomb in our entire podcast and everyone's gonna run, but I'm gonna do it anyway. It's an all-girls Catholic high school.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
problematic for me. All boys, all this, all that. We need to sprinkle kids into real life of society. So
Yeah.
maybe these girls wouldn't have done this if they were surrounded by black people and people that were different from them. But when you talk about an all-girls Catholic school, that is like one of the most homogenous environments you could possibly create.
Right.
So why would
Right.
they have any awareness about things and people that are different from them? Unless
Exactly.
they're being taught it at home, which we know most parents are not going to make the
Mm,
investment. So instead of being taught at home, like, hey, the bubble that you're living in is not the real world, what
right.
they learned at home was let's make fun of Black History Month. That's what they learned at home. So I'm sorry, maybe all girls Catholic high school is not working.
Right.
I
I
mean, I think that's a possibility. Sorry to interrupt you, Brian. I think that's a possibility as well, but I also don't think it's underestimating to think that young Black people need extra care. I mean, I think even just in your daughter saying, "I'm sick of it," like that is a resistance reaction that requires care, not
right.
like, oh, you're savvy enough, you can handle it. It's like, no, like we need to be able to give young Black people the tools to be able to navigate this so that it doesn't become something that affects how they maneuver as adults and how they view themselves. And I think that that's part of what happened with our generation. It's like, we continue to evolve, but we still have those scars of, just deal with it, just put up with it, just, do what you can. No, we got to start being more active about how we care for ourselves around it and how we care for our children around it, even if they're, in resistance to that.
And as we're
As we
coming up on break, let's continue this conversation. And what I want to do is, Tami, I'm going to go to you because I want to know from your perspective as a mother what you would like have happened with the school and others to intervene in that.
Okay.
Are you ready to take that first step towards true, unwavering inner happiness? Are you like thousands of people who have everything they need, not want, but need, and still can't seem to find happiness and fulfillment in their lives? If so, the Steps to Happiness show is for you. On my show, you will learn about the principles and practices that lead to true inner happiness. Because guess what? It isn't found in our external environment, but within ourselves instead. Together with my guests, we will explore the latest physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being practices. And together, we'll advise you on the actionable steps you can take towards a happier, more fulfilled, authentic life. So I invite you to join me each week on Soulivity TV on the Steps to Happiness show with me, Teresa Greco.
You can find all the Satanic products at our Go shop on Soulivity at go.soulivity.com now. Shop for beauty products, skincare, hair care. It is all there at the Go shop. Go shop Soulivity.
And we're back with more this morning with Soulivity, and we are talking about negative racial stereotyping and its effects on our children. And I'm going to go to Tami, but I want to just get this little piece in here from the book Reaching Teens, Strength-Based, Trauma-Sensitive, Resilience-Building Communication Strategies Rooted in Positive Youth Development. There's this one little piece that kind of encapsulates like what I want to talk about next, and that is racism exerts profound effects on youth identity development, lived experiences, and lifelong health. And so, Tami, as a mother, I wanted to ask you this specific question. If that was your daughter in that particular situation, how would you want the school to intervene?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Brian. Immediately, I would think, listen, it's beyond tragic what happened to Tyree Nichols.
Yeah.
But the one thing they did right was they fired all those jokers immediately. Yeah. Without hesitation. I feel like if schools in this particular situation, everybody should be expelled, not suspended, expelled immediately. The girl shooting the video, the girls that were in the video, anybody that was complicit, the parents.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also a fan. That's one idea. I'm also a fan of the Scarlet Letter. And as a reminder, Hester Prynne wore a Scarlet Letter A because she was an adulteress. I also am a fan of that. Like the entire school community should be put on notice that these girls are racist. Like, I don't know, maybe expulsion's not the answer. Like kicking them out of school, maybe that's not the answer. Maybe public shaming is the right answer. And it also puts other kids on notice. Like, if you do this, if you go down this path in any way, this is what's going to happen to you. You get to wear a Scarlet Letter A for the next 2 years until you prove you have rehabilitated yourself. I know, it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's it's a lot, and I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was thinking about this also because one time I was shopping with my kids and I asked the woman if she had this in a size whatever I said. And the woman said that's $180. And I looked at my kid. It was clearly like a racist like stance to take, but I looked over my kids and I looked back at her and I was like, I didn't ask you how much it was. I asked you if you had it in this size.
Right, exactly.
And then she walked away and I told my kids like, this is real life. Like there are some people that are never going to advance with the rest of society. They're always going to be rooted in hatred and racism and white supremacy. Like we're never going to eradicate it. It's never going to happen. And I'm, by the way, a generally optimistic person.
Right.
It's real world. So I don't know. That was a roundabout answer because I have a lot of feelings about this whole entire issue.
No, of course we all do. Candice, I'm gonna go to you, but I want to frame this a little bit. And I'm gonna drop a little history first.
Oh, okay.
because this goes to like stereotyping. So you both are familiar with the Salem witch trials, right? Where women were burned at the stake, right?
Yep.
Well, the modern history of that portrayal tells us that when you think of it, you think of all white women. That is not true. That's not the truth of what happened. Most of the women that were burned in Salem were black women, not white.
Mm.
And so I'm just bringing this up because we have these stereotypes, these racial stereotypes that we gin up sometimes to tell a certain story. And so I just wanted to bring some history in there just to kind of keep us centered that this isn't new. This is old. And we need to know that. So Candy, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I mean, while I don't take it lightly, and this may sound kind of Pollyanna, I do think of like Martin Luther King, that like darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that.
Yeah.
And you know, I get what you're saying, Tami, about the concept of the Scarlet Letter, but I think that we have to remember, and even, you know, Don Lemon, who's not necessarily a you know, beacon of activism, made a
Somehow he's become so. How did he become that? I don't know.
right. But he did make a comment on the CNN report or the CNN video where he said, we do have to remember that they are children. And, you know, I think that here is a good jumping off place, a good opportunity. I think when we have people so young, that the response always has to be love. I mean, I think it always has to be love no matter what. And by that, I don't mean let it be okay, let people act however they want to act. I just think that our response needs to be less about finding a punitive, shameful way of, you know, seeing people, you know, it's like the head on a stake. I think it has to be more of, you know, it always goes back to the care for mental health and education. And that has to be the focus always, because what you focus on grows. And the more energy we put towards the hate, the more energy we put towards retaliation, the more we perpetuate. And that's why this idea that it's never going to go away, because we've always been in a state of fighting and contention. And even though I know that what I'm saying, there's it's colossal, right? Because it's community consciousness, it's global consciousness. But in order for this to ever have any sort of meaning and change and transformation, we have to be able to look in each other's faces and see God, no matter what, and love, or whatever you want to call it. We have to be able to do that.
Yeah, but
that's the only.
But when we can't, I love that sentiment. It makes so much sense.
But it's not just a sentiment.
But it's not. But I just don't. I don't know. I lived in Charlottesville, Virginia for 3 years. I don't see every single one of those people like coming from God in their heart.
Well,
I'm not saying that it's, you know, like we're looking in hindsight, right? You don't see that because that's what you experienced. But I'm saying that's the practice, because none of us can do that perfectly, right? But that's what we're here to practice. That's why any of this stuff exists. That's why hate exists. That's why negative things happen. That's why people die tragically. It's because it's part of our human experience. And so what the practice is how do we become closer to whatever we think is God, love. You know, we're talking about children who are at a religious school.
Right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how do we support folks in shifting and moving into another space.
Yeah.
We'll be right back, everyone.
Oh yeah.
6 years ago, when I started Soulivity, my vision was to support everyone in improving their life through the discovery of their passion and purpose, so they could become the best version of themselves, to battle fear and ignorance, and create a better world today. Get inspired to live your passion and purpose. Visit Soulivity.com now. Soulivity Magazine and Beyond Words Publishing want to remind you about the importance of continuing to follow public health guidelines to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your community. Please continue to wear a mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. Please visit these sites for further information about how to stay safe from COVID-19 into the new year. Remember, love protects us.
We work so hard sometimes. Isn't it time for a break? Take a walk or enjoy nature, or maybe a leap or a ride, or even a dip. Spending time with a friend or some time alone. Whatever it is, always spend time growing and learning with a Soulivity weekend. Every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on Soulivity TV.
Woo! We are having a great discussion here on This Morning with Soulivity. I am joined by my beautiful guest and host, Tami Gaines and Candice Harper. We are talking about a difficult subject, which is negative racial stereotyping and its effects on our children. And I love the ending of our last discussion, because we were talking about basically how do we start fixing this? How do we start changing the paradigm of how children view each other, how they relate to each other? And then we have parents that know how to do that after that, right? So they grow up to be parents that are tolerant of other people, so we can have a diverse and inclusive society. So, Tami, you were saying something about this.
Yeah, so I think this is a good start. It's certainly not the answer, but specifically as it relates to kids, where I live, they implemented restorative justice circles. So my daughter's a junior, so they started when she was in 8th grade. So this is like 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically gather, they literally sit in a circle, and there's a trained restorative justice counselor that leads a discussion. For the students, they talk about, how do you address harmful behavior
Wow.
in a really constructive way. So they talk about racism, they talk about sexism, they talk about injustices done to the LGBTQ plus community.
Mm-hmm.
So they tackle this stuff in school at the beginning of the day to sort of to level set. This
Wow.
is what you might have heard in the news. Let's talk about that. And I think that's a really healthy, constructive way, because I think at the end of the day, like Candice, even what you were saying, at the end of the day, it is about communication and building relationships. Um, I believe that's the starting point of everything.
Mm-hmm. Candy, how about you?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, that was one of the things from youngminds.org. They were saying finding some supportive groups and communities, and as adults, building those supportive groups and communities for the children. I forget what you said the organization was, Tami. What was the name of it?
It's not an organization, it's an approach.
An approach.
And it's called restorative justice.
Yeah, so
So
restorative.
it's just rolling out like throughout the country.
Yeah,
But here on the East Coast in New York City, like this was the first area to embrace this
that's
after,
awesome.
whoever
That's
did that.
fantastic.
So things like that, and also, I was thinking too, it's about empowerment as far as young Black children, children of culture, children of color, children that could possibly even religious bias, trauma. So being able to curate what you take in, I think children would benefit from knowing that they can curate what they take in when it comes to social media and the internet and things that are sent to them. Like, we were talking earlier, I didn't watch the Tyree Nichols video because I knew what that would do to me mentally. I think children need to start being able to understand that their mental health is affected by what they consume, and also that they have the power to only consume what they want to. Because I believe that racists are mentally unhealthy. And there's nothing more detrimental to our mental health than consuming the sickness and abuse of the unwell. So children need to know that they don't have to consume it.
By the way, Candy, that is such a great point.
Yeah.
Not only can they curate what they're consuming, they can also curate who they're spending time with.
Yeah.
Which is
Right.
really, I
Right.
actually tend to spend more time having those discussions with my kids. And by the way, my oldest daughter is 26, and we had this conversation yesterday because she's up in Boston and feels very out of place.
Mm.
She's not having a good social experience in law school because she's like, Mom, Boston is like, it's another level. This is a kid that grew
Right.
up in, Montclair and
Right.
Brooklyn.
Right.
She's having a hard time. So I just told her you also can choose who you spend your time with.
Yeah. Oh,
How do you
true.
think people, when this is happening, what do they need to do? Because I think that, like, when you like, if you're airports and stuff like that, and you hear the thing come on, like, if you see something, do something.
Mhm.
I think that applies here as well, because either you think there's something going on or you don't, right? And so, what do you guys think about that?
Well, I mean, activism is always a thing, right? And I
Right.
think many different levels of how people can get involved when something makes them feel angry or hurt or disappointed, right?
Right.
I think that there's nothing wrong with supporting young people in wanting to get active and just, having constructive ways to do it. Understanding that you still have to take care of yourself, but if you feel angry about something, you don't have to just sit in it. Right? That you
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
get active in some way.
Wow. What do you
I know
think, Tim?
it's just funny. I think I'm like probably the wrong person to ask because I let no injustice go unnoticed.
What do
I
you
do
do?
think it's
What do
calling it.
you do, Tammy? What do
Well,
you do then?
I will
Like,
give you a very specific example.
okay, go for it, because
2
I
days
want to hear
ago,
this.
yeah, 2 days ago, I went to take my dog to Petco to get her nails clipped. I had an appointment. I got there 10 minutes early. I was just standing with my dog, and I did, how long is your dog going to sit there while you're waiting? The woman's like, I'll be back in 5 minutes to take care of you. So I started walking around the store, and when I came back, she looked at me, and there was 2 white people on either side of me that were not there 10 minutes before.
Are you
She
serious?
she looked at me, and she said to the one woman on my right, she's like, "What are you here for?" And the woman said she was here first. And the other woman, she said, "What are you here for?" And she said, "Oh, I just need like a quick brush or something." And she was like, "Okay, come on back." I was
What?
like, "Excuse me, I've been here. Like I had the first appointment of the day." That woman looked me in the face and took that woman and her dog back behind the door. And I immediately I
Wow.
found somebody. I was like, "I need a manager right away."
Wow.
So they got the
Wow.
manager, and I just laid out the facts. It's emotional because it's upsetting. But I'm like, let me lay out the facts of what happened. Anyway, that woman, she dragged her out, wanted her to apologize. I was like, this is beyond an apology. She needs to, like, this is way beyond, like, I'm sorry. But yeah, they made it
Wow.
right. They made it right. But I think we need to call people on their stuff in the middle of them doing their stuff.
I love it. I love it. I
So
love
they're
it. I
aware of
love
it.
it. I love it. Listen, we're gonna take another break. I love this topic today. I mean, I'm glad that we're tackling it. I'm glad that we're having an open discussion on it. I think we're probably going to have maybe several shows
Mhm.
talking about different aspects of this.
Mhm.
Because I think that I'm still pissed about
Tangled
it.
web.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
a
still pissed
tangled web.
about it. And
Yeah.
so, everyone, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. We'll be right back.
There, this is Brian with Soulivity.com. I want to share some exciting news about our new Aspire Academy by Soulivity. Now, you probably want to know what the Aspire Academy by Soulivity is. Well, it exclusively connects you with people around the globe and who share the intense desire to improve themselves and create a better life for themselves today. There's classes, there's workshops, there's live events, and even more exclusively just for you. You see, I wanted you to have a safe space where you could grow, you could learn, and it would empower you in all aspects of your life, including your mind, your body, and your soul. So how do you get started? Well, it is so easy. First of all, the best part, joining Aspire Academy is absolutely free. Just click on the Join Now button, sign up, and begin your journey. As a special part of this invitation to you, there are some free courses that are available for you to try from our amazing roster of coaches and collaborators. It's our way of saying thank you for all of your support and being with us along our journey of expansion. I hope you enjoy the Aspire Academy by Soulivity today. Start the process. Learn more about your passion, your purpose, and how to live a higher quality life.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity, and I'm joined by my host, Tami Gaines and Candice Harper. Unfortunately, we're running out of time to talk about stuff today. This was a fantastic topic. As I said before, I think that here at Soulivity, we're all about empowering, but we're also about battling fear and ignorance. And at the heart of all this is that fear and ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't let it stand anymore, everyone. We can't let this just go by. We've got to make a change, because we just keep perpetuating it with incidents like this, where you have young white Catholic girls making fun of a Black student in Black History Month.
Mm-hmm.
And they know it. They knew it was Black History Month because they said it out of their mouth.
And they sent the video to Black students.
Directly.
And
see, that cannot be tolerated. That cannot be, and that's not like, oh, their kids are being kids. No.
It's a very long road. We've been walking this road for hundreds of years, right?
Exactly.
It's a road worth walking. But I don't want to be a pessimist. That's why I said before, I don't see this being eradicated anytime soon. I think we just need to be committed to the walk.
Absolutely. Tami, guess what's coming up on Monday?
My Tami Talks podcast.
Absolutely. Who's going to be on this week?
Super excited. So, so once a month, I'm going to have my good friend Sharon Weber join me. We both have kids with special needs. There is a giant community of people, individuals, and families that have a special needs person in their life, and that's an extraordinary level of support that they need, and it's sort of hard to find. So Monday's my first show with Sharon, and we're going to really talk about how you build resilience when you are dealing with a kid, or by the way, an adult with special needs. It's just a different beast. Wow. So she's joining me on Monday for the first time. I'm super excited to dig into this, and I'm also looking forward to having that monthly conversation really focused on those families that need extra support.
I love it. And Candy, you always have something going on.
Well, I mean, always I have my coaching going on for sure. So there's, my one-on-one intensive, and also my podcast, Love Life Skills for Leaders. We have some things in the works too, Brian, that we're talking about.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. we haven't settled on anything. Well, we're talking about some things, so I don't want to put it out there. But I do want to make sure people know that I still have the promo code Soulivity50 if they want to work with me around coaching.
Right. And they just need to go to CandiceHarperLoveCoach.com.
CandiceHarperLoveCoach.com.
Perfect. And what services do they get the 50 off of? I mean, the 50%. There's some specific ones.
Particularly my one-on-one intensive, Love Life Skills for Leaders, which is 12 weeks. It's for women of culture, professional women of culture who want to create a love life that loves us back. And also I have a membership group that is the intensive, but with a community. And so they could get 50 off of either of those products.
Candy, can I
Fantastic.
buy a gift card for those girls in Philly?
Well, if they were even close to my ideal client.
We
Yeah, no,
also want to remind you, even though we had this conversation today, February is Black History Month. And there's great resources, great events happening all over the country. You can learn more about Black history by going to blackhistorymonth.gov. That's blackhistory.gov, and find out more about all the great African American heroes and amazing people, because Black history is American history, y'all.
Mhm.
Also want to let you know, listen, we want you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all those social media channels. You can learn more about events coming up. You can also be part of some giveaways. Also, if you go to our webpage, soulivity.com/this-morning, you can also sign up for our mailing list, where you can get even more access to exclusive content. Wow, this was another great show. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I have to give you two props. You are not afraid to take on big topics.
Well, that's what we do here. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Listen, on behalf of all of us, including my beautiful co-hosts, Candice Harper and Tami Gaines, I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of This Morning with Soulivity. We hope that you come back and join us every day at 8 a.m. for our live broadcast right here on soulivity.com. Or you can listen to the replay at 9 a.m. Pacific on KMET 1490 AM for all of you out on the West Coast. Listen, we will see you next time. Have a fantastic best life.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.